Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Masked Monologues. Today, I'm excited to have a special guest with me, Krista Melanson. Can you please introduce yourself? Tell us about what you do because this is so eccentric. I've never heard of it before, and I'm just so intrigued by it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Krista. I am the relationship chef. And I graduated from the Cordon Bleu in Paris as a classically trained chef. And I was in the kitchen for years cooking. And I left the kitchen to raise a family because I couldn't see being on my feet and cooking and all of that stuff. Pregnant with little kids, they're definitely an energy. So I left the kitchen and I was doing relationship coaching, and I really enjoyed that because love and relationships is really my passion. But of course, cooking is too. And it was just not all that long ago. I thought, you know what? I need to find a way to bring both of my passions together. And this idea was born. I help couples connect in the kitchen through curated date night culinary adventures. So essentially, I do all the planning for couples, and they just have to do a little bit of grocery shopping, and then they have a wonderful romantic connected date night in the privacy of their own home.
Oh, I love what you do. I'm just wondering, you say you loved cooking and then you also loved relationship coaching and dating. And I'm just thinking, someone, how do you think to connect those two dots? Was it a process? Did you seek advice from a friend or a family member? Or did you just have this idea one day and you thought, I'm going to put it into action?
I would like to say I'm brilliant and came up with this idea all on my own, but no, I had a coaching group that I'm part of, and my mentor said, she said, you really need to find a way. She said, you're so good in the kitchen. You're obviously so passionate about it. She said, you need to find a way to bring these two things together. And then that sent my mind spinning. And it was one of those, why didn't I think of that before? And then as soon as the idea was seated in my head, then I started working on it and thinking about ways I could change it and researched what some other people were doing, not in cooking, but in similar ideas. And then I thought, you know what, this would be great because it comes back a little bit to me. I've never played well in the kitchen. I've always been a bit of a control freak and not really loved having other people in the kitchen with me,
Yes.
although I see the merit to it. But then I met this amazing man who is my partner, and he and I pretty much do everything together. And slowly I started letting him come into the kitchen and help me. And I realized that it's actually really amazing to be in the kitchen with him and to create something together and talk back and forth and share ideas. And sometimes the mistakes are the best part of it. And it all developed with that, a combination of my relationship with my partner and just wanting to bring these two together. And I thought, you know what, this is a great way to help couples connect.
No, this is such a wonderful idea, especially when I think back to some of my fondest memories. It was when I was a young child with my grandmother in the kitchen, and it's just that bonding experience that you have there. You say that you center this around couples and you have these conversations that you add into the date night experience. Can you tell me about how you thought of creating these conversations or these prompts? What is it exactly? Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. The whole when you think about food, every major event in our lives, whether it's a wedding or birthday or anniversary or graduation or whatever, food is always an important part of it, right? So the attraction for food as being an event-based thing makes a lot of sense. So when you want to bring it into a date, you want to turn it into something special. The way I looked at it was you can go out to a restaurant and have dinner with your partner, but it's not the same as being at home in an intimate setting. So if you're in an intimate setting, then you not only want to cook, but you want to bring some conversation into it and nothing tough. I don't ever do anything that could be potentially controversial
Mm.
between couples, but I try to keep it light conversation that can be worked in while you're cooking, such as one of the ones I had was, have you ever lied about saying you had an allergy for a food that you just didn't like? Things like that.
Yes.
And the questions are all designed to keep it fun, but keep the conversation flowing while you're doing it. And I know that as couples, if you're with somebody, then you know them pretty well, but there's always a few little quirky things that you don't know. And so my questions are all designed to try and pull that out a little bit, and have laughter around it because it's got to be fun, right?
Yes.
You want it to be sensual and romantic and a bonding experience, but it has to be fun at the same time. And I think if you hit the right conversational notes, then you can really bring that fun aspect into it. And some couples will never need the conversation notes, but for those who want a little guidance or a little
Mhm.
direction, then those are there.
And I'm wondering, do people purchase this date night experience as a subscription box? Do you just mail it to them? Is it like a monthly subscription where you do the date night, or is it just a one-time deal where you order this box? How do they receive the recipe cards? Is it cut out in your cardboard box? I'm thinking about some index cards, or how have you structured this experience?
It's a yearly subscription thing, and people can do it one night a month or two nights a month. We start with one night a month, and then people can increase it if they want. It's all electronic, and it's not just a recipe. I do a full cooking class for them, and it's all recorded. So it's a drip feed. People will get one date a month, and in that date, there will be fun food facts. There will be the conversation points, and there's a series of videos to cover the creation of the recipe. And I should say, and this is really important to me, is that the recipes are made to be reproduced. They're a lovely meal, but they're made to be something that people can do without having to have crazy culinary skills or anything like that. Often when you're making a recipe, it will take more than, say, a 1 hour, 2 hour time frame that you have. There's some prep work. And so with every recipe, there's a couple smaller videos that will have prep work that you can do the day before, and you can do those alone so that you are prepared for the big event, which is the date night.
Yes, I love that concept. I'm wondering, have you ever tried to create a tangible project, or have you decided to keep it strictly online? And what have you noticed just between those two? I don't know if you have any friends that are doing something similar, or you've looked into other companies that are doing something similar. If maybe doing more of a physical product would appeal more to couples. I'm just asking, just putting it out there.
I taught in-person cooking classes for years. And so that is part of the impetus behind this is I'm familiar with teaching classes and I enjoy teaching classes and sharing one of my passions with people. So I have done that in person. The problem with in person is that you can't reach as many people and help as many people because you're limited to the area you're in. The other thing about doing in-person events more is that you also run into time conflicts, right? So one couple may be available Thursday night, another couple is available Friday night. One person's in one time zone, one person's in the other. So by doing this, they can really schedule it into their schedule for whatever works for them. And I think that's a great way to do it. In terms of having something a little more physical, and if I've thought about it in with regards to this project, I do actually have a couples retreat in the works, myself and a holistic sensual healer. Sorry, some words, lost my words. She and I are working together and we are creating actually a couples retreat that we're going to do in France that will involve some couples work, breath work and couples yoga and some mindset work for the couples, but also, and that's her forte, and my forte will be teaching cooking classes and going to vineyards and going to local markets and seeing a little bit about the area. So that is, we're going to run our first one of those in the fall. So that is actually in the works as well.
Yes. And now I want to jump back to your culinary training. And someone who's delved a little bit into culinary training or just have known chefs, I know that you could be making a meal for about 3, 4 hours. I've seen chefs perfecting certain desserts and they're using the blowtorch. And I'm wondering, how was culinary school like for you? How long did it take you? How would someone get into it? And what skills would you need? What skills are required to be an exceptional chef?
Oh, cooking school was so much fun for me. I mean, I went to school in Paris, which of course makes so much difference. It was an incredible experience. I always said I was one of the best fed poor students in the world because everything we made, we got to keep. instead of going home and having my ramen that a lot of students will have, I would be having beef Wellington or something like that
Yes.
because that would be what I made at school. Culinary school, for the most part, all schools will have different levels and different programs, but for the most part, every school will start with an entry level program, which is how I started. And it took me right to the very basics of how to chop an onion and how to peel a potato and how to create a good stock and all of these things. And then it builds on these key elements that it teaches you in the beginning. And it sounds, people say, I know how to chop an onion, but there's all the sort of subtle fine points of it, which is a little tiny bit of onion that is called a mirepoix that you want to make it consistent size if you're going to leave it in the sauce. But if you're going to take it out of the sauce, you cut it a little bit bigger. All these little fine points that people don't think about. And to me, I've always been of the mind that it's the little fine points, the subtleties that make a difference in what you cook. And I have a lot of people say to me, I make this and it's not nearly as good as how you make it. And for me, the difference really is that I have an attention to detail with food and I'm very careful. Everything I do is intentional. Nothing's ever rushed or doesn't matter. And I think that really shows through in the final product.
Yes. No, that's a wonderful just concept or idea to have is that attention to detail because I'm the type of cook who cuts everything up, puts it in, and hopes that it'll work out.
I've had those moments. I get that too, for sure. But usually it's with intention.
Yes. And so I'm wondering, do you have any tips or tricks for anybody who is just starting out with cooking classes? Would you suggest that they go to culinary school, or do you think that nowadays you could do it by taking a course online, or how could you get into just learning how to be a better chef?
The first thing I want to say is that if somebody wants to do it professionally, it's hard work. It's a long, hard grind to do it. So you really have to be committed. If you want to grow, you can get a job in a restaurant in lots of places as a prep cook or whatever. And that's relatively easy to do. If you want a career that eventually you're going to be the head chef in a fine restaurant or a hotel or something like that, it's a long road and it's a lot of hours of not being appreciated. So I just always like to warn people that if you want to do it, just be prepared. Sometimes it's not quite as glamorous as it looks. But having said that, there's a lot of places that value experience over a culinary school. If you're going to a hotel or something like that, if you want to work in a hotel or a cruise ship, they want you to have the credentials. But if there's a little bistro in downtown, wherever you live, chances are they want somebody who's got experience more than culinary schools. What I always think the best way to proceed is to start with a course that's pretty much the basics so that you have some little bit of learning under your belt and then just go and start getting experience in restaurants and working and paying attention and taking an interest and asking questions and asking to take on different tasks so that you can learn while you're cooking. And that's usually a really productive way to further your career when it comes to cooking.
Yes. And I know that before you said you had in-person classes, and I'm wondering for these in-person classes, did you usually rent out a cooking room or did you own like a little cooking station cooking area, cooking studio? I'm not sure what you refer to it as a chef kitchen. Did you rent it out? Did you own one? How did you turn your passion into a business?
I did it two ways. I did sort of small scale cooking classes and an intimate atmosphere in my own kitchen, bringing people in. But I also did a lot of it. I was working for another company who did cooking classes and they hired me to be their sort of in-house chef that did it and they had their cooking kitchen with the overhead mirrors and everything and allowed me to develop my own recipes and just create these cooking classes for other people. So I was fortunate enough to be hired to be doing it for somebody else.
Yes, and you also said that with you did recorded videos. What was the process of recording these videos? Did you have a professional photographer? Did you do it yourself? How would someone go about creating a training course or a program?
I've done the videos myself because it really is, it's meant to be an intimate evening with couples. And I think it's more intimate when it's more authentic. So
Mhm.
it's me and I've got my I generally record them on Zoom, and I set my laptop up and a light ring, and I have everything geared towards my workspace and the stove so that I can do everything on the video, and I'm doing it myself and it runs while I'm cooking and chatting away to the camera. And the way I have everything angled, you can see my hands and what I'm doing. I explain everything in great detail anyways, but I find that sometimes the really polished ones, I shouldn't say polished, but when you spend a lot of money to do things professionally, it doesn't necessarily mean you have a better product. Sometimes it's a little bit more intimidating. Sometimes it comes off as less authentic. And I'm not saying that those are not great ways to do it as well.
Yes.
But I find that when it's just me and the camera, it's a very authentic cooking experience. And I'm talking to people as I go and giving them little tidbits, and they can see all the, if I make a mistake or I cut something wrong or whatever, they see all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't even edit it. So it is a genuine, it's meant to be a cooking experience where we are cooking together essentially. And the more I can make people feel like that, I think the better the experience is for everybody.
Yes, no, I love how having that level of intimacy just with you and the camera. When you're doing your cooking or you're doing your videos, is it mainly just concentrating on the cooking, or do you have any questions asking people about their relationships? Is that in there, or is that just more the digital cards or whatever you have with the program?
Oh, no, I encourage conversation the whole time because, as I'm sure, that there are times when you're cooking and there's downtime, right? And it's like
Yes.
watching paint dry, watching me cut up an
Hmm.
onion. So I'm chatting away with, like you said, conversation points and asking them questions. And even though I'm not there to hear them engage, it's still giving them an idea of
Hmm.
how to engage. And sometimes it's physical engagement in terms of I'll be chopping the onion and I will ask their viewers, I'll say, who's better at chopping vegetables? Is it
Yes.
you or you? Well, let's switch. And then you take on the other role that you're not as comfortable with and encourage people to interact and connect like that by switching things up. So I give them physical tasks in terms of assigning you do this and you do that. Or I'll say, one of you can start doing this and the other one can start doing that. And I hope that keeps everybody engaged and moving along.
Yes. And you were saying you're a relationship coach, so having that relationship knowledge, do you also provide some insights into how to have healthy relationships, as well as the culinary, the recipes and your tips on how to chop up onions? Do you also say, hey, these are a couple things you can do in your relationship that might improve your communication, that it might improve your happiness and foster a better relationship?
Definitely. That's an important part of it. And I start with that before anybody ever even attends a cooking class or anything, is I start right at the beginning with my marketing. I will say, if there's something that you want to do with your partner, don't ask them, don't leave hints. Go ahead and say, I would really like to do this. And it's something I think I'd like to do for both of us, not just for me, but I think it's good for both of us. And so I start talking about relationships in terms of the cooking classes and in terms of just a relationship from the very beginning. So that's a theme that goes right through till they complete their year of
Mm.
date night adventures.
Yeah. Do you have any tips and tricks for others out there?
For other business people or couples?
For couples?
Oh, the most important thing that I always tell people is you've chosen to spend your life with this person. You've chosen this person as your partner. Don't ever let the spark die down. And if it does die down a little bit, then find ways to bring it back because it's important when you have a happy relationship and you have shared love and support with your partner. It trickles through every part of your life. And specifically, I always tell parents that if you set aside time at least once a month to have a date, you're doing it as much for your kids as you are for yourself because your kids will benefit from happy parents who have more adult time.
Yes. And now just going back to that question, what would your advice be for entrepreneurs who are starting up their businesses and maybe doing something similar to you? Maybe it's in relationship coaching, maybe it's in the culinary industry, or maybe it's just creating a training program, a course to educate others.
I think that it's important to have a good marketing or PR plan. If you are in business, no matter what kind of business it is, you're not going to sell if nobody knows anything about you or knows where to find you. So have a good PR plan. But the most important thing that somebody told me once, and I've really taken this to heart, is the people who go into business and they work at their business and don't succeed is generally because they've quit. So don't quit. It will happen. If you are dedicated and you really want to make something happen, you can do it. Don't give up.
Yes, and you also touched on the marketing and the promotion aspect of creating a business. What have been some good marketing tips or some good promotional, maybe it's ads, maybe it's content creation that you have found has worked for your business?
Mostly it's been content creation. I have grown my business and I swear by the idea of attraction marketing, which is I don't go after people and say, hey, buy my thing. I don't pop into
Mhm.
people's DMs. I let people learn about me and learn what I do. And when they're interested and ready, they come to me to become a client. And I think that content is really important, but I think that people, what's funny, I know somebody, she is a book editor and she's incredibly talented, but she worries about making her content perfect. And it leads her to not post, not create the content in the first place. And
Yes.
so I think it's really important to just act on it. Start putting yourself out there, start creating content, and don't worry if it's not perfect. It will refine as time goes by. But imperfect action is always going to be better than no action at all.
No, that's a wonderful key takeaway. Perfectionism can definitely kill productivity.
Definitely.
Yes. And now I would like to shout out to your website, your social media platforms. If there's any couples out there who want to sign up for this course, this program, how can they do it and where can they communicate with you?
As far as the program, signing up for the program, then the website is Krista, Krista hyphen Marie, Marie.com. Pretty simple. And then my Facebook page is just my name, Krista Melanson. And I encourage anybody to jump in and send me a friend request and communicate through there, but also see a lot of who I am and little snippets into my life, because I think it's important when you're going to potentially buy from somebody and do a program that you know a little bit about that person. And so I encourage people to get to know me a little bit and send me a DM, ask me any questions you have about what it is that I do and how I can help. And I just love talking to people and connecting to people.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate all the great insights you've shared. And please do check Krista out. If you like this podcast and you want more episodes like this, then please share it with a friend or family member. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great. I appreciate it and great conversation. Thank you.
Treat me the right way. Always thought, love it for me, no love it for me. Always thought.